Welcome, Moaa family, to another episode of the Moaa Member Chat. Today's episode, we have a very special guest. We have our president, Dr. China Jude, who is the Senior Associate AD for Administration and the Senior Woman Administrator at the University of Wyoming. How are we doing today?
I'm fine, thank you, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing good, doing great. The weekend is here, so excited to finish up some things in the office and then relax.
I'm sure it'll be well deserved.
Absolutely. So we thank you for joining us today. And traditionally, we have our members go through their journey, but being as though you are very accomplished, I wanted to just start off and just ask you, is there anything that you found unique in your journey up to this point, or something that happened during your journey that may not be familiar with those that are familiar with you?
That's a great question. I wasn't prepared for that question in my journey. I have to admit that throughout my journey, especially when I got into collegiate athletics, which was about 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to meet with so many wonderful people. It's just amazing how large this industry is with the 1,100 NCAA institutions, but it's such a small, close-knit family across the board. And so I just did not realize the connections, what is it, like 6 degrees of separation or something like that, all of the connections. And the best part about these connections is that we have very similar passions, which is making sure that we're supporting the student athletes and providing some great resources and for us to be successful and winning championships, as well as making sure that our student athletes and our community are taken care of, being engaged.
Absolutely. Now, you kind of spoke to some of the reasons, or I guess I picked up on some of the reasons why I believe you enjoy being in this field, but I guess, can you identify some of the things that keep you going, keep that flame lit, and, why you still do what you do?
I have to admit, being a product of the student athlete experience, I know that I went through some of my ups and downs, and as I was navigating in that experience as a historically Black college university graduate, I knew that there was a lot of self-reflection, self-discovery, and then just trying to find what those passions were. I'm, from the Chicagoland area, going to college at 16 years old on a Division I scholarship. So I had, no worries in the world, but I knew that there were certain things that I was going to be challenged in, being a woman of color. And so diversity, equity, and inclusion is definitely a passion of mine. Mental health, wellness is a passion of mine also. I think I'm more known on diversity, equity, inclusion side, but just being challenged at such a young age in college and navigating through the space of sports and HBCUs, and I was in broadcast journalism, so there was just so much that was happening that I knew that I had to take care of myself before I could take care of anyone else. And so with that in mind, those are the things that we all have to, deal with right now in the space that we're in with the social unrest and division in the country. So I really feel that those particular areas are something that is going to continue to be a priority throughout not only this industry, but just in this whole, world. And we just have to do a better job of getting others engaged and listening to others' perspectives so we can grow in the space.
Now, you speak engagement, being the Moaa president. Can you walk us through when you started with the organization to serving on committees,
Wow.
now as the president? Just, speak to us about that journey and what have you enjoyed about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a 15-year journey, 15 years.
Wow.
And Actually, when it's going by very fast. I started um, as a regular member, and I was just kind of learning myself as a young athletic director at a Division II at Cheney University in Pennsylvania. And fortunately, I connected with some people, and one of the board members called one day and asked me if I could do a project for her. And of course, I'm going to say yes, because I'm still learning about the organization and how can I support the organization and this particular administrator who's currently a Division III athletic director. And so I did the project, and then one project led to another project, which led to another project. And then I joined some committees and just wanted to be involved in committees. I applied to be on the board and actually got rejected. Got rejected on that first application. I was hurt at that particular time, but I was really invested. I was invested in the organization, even though at that time, maybe in comparison to where I'm at currently, I was a no-name administrator. But I wanted to just continue to participate in the best way that I could. And then I applied again probably the very next year to be on the board. And I was accepted. And then that led to the opportunity to run for the executive committee. And I did at that particular time. Now I had a laundry list of initiatives and activities that I participated on when I served as the chair of the Education and Professional Development Committee, and then of course the chair of the External Relations, which you are now the chair. And so that led to executive committee position to then I ran for vice president. And then, of course, it's a natural progression. When you're a vice president, you become the president. So that was 15 years. And actually, it went by extremely fast because I was passionate about the movement. I wasn't trying to get anything accomplished with the exception of how can we make Moaa to be the best organization we can within this particular space. And my 2 years serving as the president is probably the most rewarding experience that I have. And I just love being able to support many individuals and organizations, support you, Michael, doing a great job in what you're doing to really push the brand out nationwide and hopefully beyond in the future.
Absolutely. Now, you speak of passion, and you spoke earlier about being a former volleyball student athlete. I'm not sure if our more members know that you were also a head volleyball coach.
Yeah.
And so,
for several institutions, yes.
Yeah, definitely. So, how does it feel, or how did it feel to go from a former student athlete to a coach? Can you kind of speak to that experience, and were you anxious, nervous about that transition? Did you ever see yourself as a coach?
That's a great question, Michael. I knew that when I wanted to be in the intercollegiate space, at that time, the ultimate goal was to be an SWA. That was the ultimate goal. And so as I was speaking to a lot of people, they suggested for me to pursue a coaching position first and to utilize my volleyball experience to get me into the industry. You asked a question earlier about maybe what people don't know. What people don't know is I worked in radio and television first. And then I worked in non-for-profit community organizations, working for two politicians in two different states. And so all of that experience were transferable to come into the sports space. So by transitioning from a student athlete, radio and television, non-for-profit, of course I have a military experience as well. I kind of position it as a way of, we can continue to tell the community what not to do, stay off of drugs and gangs and all of these different types of say no to many things, I always lean towards what do we say yes to? We say yes to healthy lifestyles. We say yes to a sound mind and body. We say yes to doing good in the community. And all of that is incorporated into athletics. So it was a great transition as being a coach and making sure that we're taking care of our student athletes. But I felt that we also have to make sure that we're taking care of staff and coaches too, because they have to have a sound mind and body. So I thought the transition was pretty smooth for me because I brought all that to the table.
So is it fair to say if you hadn't transitioned to college athletics administration, you would have continued the career path in communications and broadcasting and community engagement with and politics?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned politics because I remember when I was working as a community activist, a community organizer, someone approached me and asked me if I would be interested in a political consideration. And of course, I rejected that immediately. Because I really wanted to make sure that I was able to utilize my voice for good, but not have so many restrictions on it. So, but yes, to answer your question, if I was not working in athletics, I probably would have still worked in radio, television, broadcasting. And the ultimate goal was to be a radio, television broadcaster, specifically in sports. So I wanted Robin Roberts' job. That's whose job I was going after. I knew she couldn't work there forever at ESPN at that time. And so I really wanted to be a sports broadcaster.
Absolutely. Now you speak of Robin Roberts, who is a very prominent individual. I'm sure she's somebody that anyone would love to sit down and have a conversation with. But yeah, in that same vein, is there someone that you have met or you would have wished to have met that's no longer with us, that if you can choose to have a conversation with, who would that individual or individuals be?
That's a great question. So, there are so many great leaders out there, but I really feel that they always say it's great to where you at, but know where you came from. Mm-hmm. And so I remember when I was just learning sports. And as I mentioned before, I went to college at 16. So you can imagine how young I was in high school and junior high school, just trying to figure it myself out. And so there was a woman by the name of Flo Hyman. And Flo Hyman is an Olympic volleyball player. And Flo Hyman is about 6'5". She passed away in 1986 from Marfan syndrome, which is what they call the tall person's disease, long arms. And when I didn't know anything about volleyball until I saw her. And I would watch her Olympics, national team. As a matter of fact, like I said, I'm from Chicago. When she came to Chicago and I was 15 years old, the Olympic team came to Chicago to play. And I went to my mother and asked her, can I go into the city to watch her? She thought I was crazy for asking that question, but I was obsessed with Flo Hyman because she introduced me to a sport where I did not see Black and brown people, a lot of Black and brown people at that time. And that experience in watching her and learning from her mannerisms, watching her interviews, and just learning how to play the sport, which eventually earned me a Division I scholarship at 15 years old. And for me to have a job as a coach, which now led into a great career in athletics, she really did make a significant difference in my life. And I will always, I've never met her. I've met her teammates, Rita Crockett, but I've never met her. And I would have loved to have the opportunity to sit down and talk to her, because she was a trailblazer in the sport, and it impacted my life positively.
That's great, really great. And you speak of trailblazers, that spirit, that fire, definitely it's in you, as you in your own right have made history along your journey, which is only right in terms of celebrating that, with it being Women's History Month. Can you just speak on the history that you've made and the steps that women have made just across the entire landscape, not just college athletics, and what this month means to you?
Well, it recognizes the immense contributions that women make in this world, and it also distinguishes the barriers and the challenges that women has to face while they're caring for themselves, their families, they're pursuing their professional careers, as well as what they're contributing in the world. I know that at times that women, especially women of color, would probably fight through many challenges more than opportunities are opening. And I can say that I congratulate all of the women, in this country and this world that are really making differences for positive change, because no matter what, we're going to be leaving this world to our children and our children's children. And women are making a significant difference to fight through those barriers, to make sure that we're creating a better world. So congratulations to all the women out there. And it's just a blessing of those women who have came across my life, including my own mother, who's passed away in 1994, that they have really made a significant difference.
Definitely. Now, speaking of just of that, and also transitioning to being recognized by your peers, you recently received the 2020 Sports Business Journal Game Changers Award. Can you speak of that accomplishment, and what does that mean to you?
That's a huge recognition. I was fortunate, I think a year before, to be recognized by women leaders in college sports. And it was just wonderful to have that opportunity for my peers to see the work that I'm doing. Game Changers take it to a whole nother level, because it's not specific to college sports. It's just sports, in the sports industry, pro, college, corporate, all across the board. And, I know that several years ago, before I even was in this presidency for Moaa, I would probably say maybe about 10, 15 years ago, one of the things that I was always told was trying to be very mindful of what you say and talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it may hinder you in getting jobs. And my reply was, people need to understand that I was in radio and television before, so I can have a mic, or I can incorporate it within college sports. Either way, I'm going to say it. I got to say what I have to say. So let's go ahead and flow with this. And of course, I have to be mindful of my audience. So that was 10 plus years ago. And here it is in 2020, I'm being acknowledged for my commitment and my consistency in diversity, equity, inclusion, and engaging many, many demographics to be a part of it. That's huge. And it is such an honor to be in a class with attorneys, executive vice presidents from pro organizations to corporate executives. It's huge. Patty Phillips from Women Leaders is in that class. Joni Commissar from the NCAA is in that class. I mean, it is so great to be in company with just great leaders. And I look forward to continuing to stay in contact with them. We do have meetings every quarter. So to continue to stay connected, because we were acknowledged virtually. But I'm hoping that one day we can all get together and have a toast.
Absolutely. Now, you've come a long way. I'm sure you've definitely had some moments where, they were kind of tough. So I'm curious as to, is there a particular song that you may go to that definitely gets you pumped up before maybe a big interview, or something that gets you through a tough day?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love Alicia Keys and Girl on Fire. This girl is on fire, and that really hypes me up. It really does. I love the video also, but it really hypes me up because we have to always stay on our toes for everything. And so as we are pushing through a lot of challenges in the industry and in life, this is weird. This is something that no one knows that I do. So lots of matches in my kitchen, and I will just light a match and then play the Alicia Keys song on fire, because I felt like, this is, a victory, whatever I'm tackling, and it just hypes me up.
That's pretty funny.
And that's the only time I use those matches. I don't use those matches for anything else unless the lights go out and I have to put light a candle, but that's it.
Absolutely. Now, here's something that people may not know about something that we have in common is I've also had some time in Wyoming. When I lived in Billings, Montana for some time, would frequent going to various different cities in Wyoming, Cheyenne, to Story. Never been to Laramie. So I was curious in terms of...
Come visit us one day.
Speaking to that adjustment, going from a city such as Chicago or Queens, and then transitioning to the Mountain West, just kind of speak on that experience.
I always joke when alumni and people in the community ask what it was like to have that work on that transition. I said, well, Laramie, Wyoming is no different from Chicago and New York City. It just has less trees and less buildings. You still have people. I mean, it is a smaller community. We're about 30,000 people in Laramie, Wyoming, and the entire state of Wyoming is about 500,000. And so it's beautiful out here. The transition was pretty seamless for me for several reasons. I think a lot of people struggle with thinking, how can you go from a big city, 10 million people in New York City, to a small area like Laramie, Wyoming? Number one, you have to have the right mindset. What happens is people go straight for the social aspect of it. I don't have any place to hang out and things like that. I really believe that it gave me the opportunity to reflect on what was important for me. And if I'm going to be a great administrator, I need to be a great administrator for different types of populations, different types of areas. It can't be, I'm only going to be a great administrator in in Queens, New York, and that's it. I need to be a great administrator in Laramie, Wyoming, in Queens, in Chicago, in Florida. I want to be able to show my diverse side, just like I expect other administrators and leaders to show diversity on their side. So who am I, as even now the current Moaa president, to have those kind of conversations, and I'm not willing to be open? So that's the reason why I said the mindset is really important. The second thing is I want to be able to learn from other people's perspectives. I cannot just be positioned in a place where everyone thinks like me. So coming to Wyoming really gave me the opportunity to learn the conservative values, those who are very invested in Second Amendment rights. Those are invested on when it comes to different political views. I need to learn that if I want to be a great leader myself. And then it gives us the opportunity to learn from each other. And third, as long as there's an airport, I'm fine. So if I go, then I need to go in a different environment, or back to New York or Chicago or wherever. We have an airport. I can just get on an airplane and just go wherever I have to go. So I've been here for 3 years, and it's a great experience. I'm learning a lot, not only about the community, but I'm definitely learning a lot about myself.
Absolutely. And I can speak to when I moved from Philadelphia to Montana. I went out there with a purpose, it was to prolong my playing career in football. And you speak to that in your perspective. And yes, absolutely. When you think of moving from a big city to a more rural community, people definitely go to the social aspect of it. But when you do lead with your purpose or your focus, you tend to figure out the social aspect of wherever you at, and you find things that you do like, and you can find them in a rural community to a larger community. So I could definitely speak to that.
Yeah, definitely. I drew from those experiences when I lived in small towns in Alabama also. So I think that diversity kind of helps you become a more well-rounded person. So good for you for making that decision.
Absolutely. Now, is there something that you're currently working on, either in the community or at the institution?
Yeah, gosh, working on a lot. The work doesn't stop when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. I just finished co-chairing a very large committee with Lead One, and my co-chair, Sean Frazier from Northern Illinois University, made a significant difference in helping us lead the effort in how we can create diverse representation in FBS. So we created those 10 recommendations. I hope everyone had the opportunity to at least read the executive summary of that white paper. This was about a 5-month process that we worked on. We're going to continue to keep that white paper alive to make sure that we're tapping into those recommendations and engaging other organizations such as the NCAA and others on how we can address those recommendations. For me, incorporating the economics of diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as the mental health component, also in response to a lot of things that's happening with the social unrest and the political divide and things like that. We still have to understand we have to take care of ourselves through this pandemic. And so we need to make sure that we're utilizing the resources. It is okay to reach out, to ask for help, so we can be better people, better resources for our student athletes. So working with some mental health initiatives so we can continue growing that particular space. And of course, from a Moaa perspective, just continuously growing the organization. We're now at 922 members. The goal is to try to hit that 1,000 mark. Even if it doesn't hit under my leadership, I'm looking forward to the transition with Ed Scott from Morgan State University to assume the presidency for the next 2 years so we can hit that. And I want to just continue to be involved and engaged in helping and supporting others.
We definitely thank you for, as I said before, being a trailblazer and moving the needle in terms of our organization. And yes, Dr. Ed Scott, you definitely have some big shoes to fill. We are definitely confident that you will do a great job as the incoming president of the organization. Now, we are at the end of our episode, and as we traditionally do, it's our Moaa Member Minute. So it's a chance for you, Dr. Jude, to give any professional or personal advice for our Moaa family.
I appreciate it. Michael, thank you very much for creating this opportunity for us to utilize our voice to make change. So you are a trailblazer yourself, and I look forward to your growth in the organization as well as your growth professionally and personally. You know, serving as the president of the Minority Opportunities Athletics Association during a time of social unrest, a national pandemic, change of national leadership, and at the height of division in the country, it provides us with the opportunity to reflect on what we value the most, which should be taking care of ourselves, our families, and our community. So let's spend time embracing on how we can be an asset and not a deficit to our communities. And that means holding ourselves accountable when we fall short in supporting our student athletes, our colleagues, and our community, as well, of course, our family. Our student athletes' mental health and well-being should be a priority. So let's make sure that we're not only taking care of ourselves, but we're taking care of others. And I look forward to working hard for the next couple of months to eventually pass the gavel to our incoming president, Ed Scott from Morgan State University, to carry on the mission. I wish everyone a wonderful, wonderful transition from a pandemic to hopefully vaccinations, so we can continue to make this a world of inclusivity and peace. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. We definitely thank you again, Dr. China Jude, our current president. And as always, Moaa family, I'm your host, Michael Bazemore. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned.